Hey there, Brian the Ride Mechanic here. I haven't posted in a long time. Apologize for that. Basically, it's the videos. I'm sure a lot of you know they take a long time to edit and put together and everything else, and it's a big pain in the butt for sure. One thing that I wanted to do was make useful content that a lot of people found interesting. And this channel isn't for your everyday fans, ride fans for sure. This is for a very special group of people that focus on the behind the scenes, how things work, not necessarily about how rides ride, but more how they function in the background. So one of the things I realized that I need to do is that I slow down making videos and I don't produce videos because it takes so much effort to bring all the material together. And a lot of that is finding pictures and videos and everything else to share with you guys, because when I used to work at the park, I came across so much broken, messed up things and so many specialty components that I never thought to save any of those pictures. And there's a lot of pictures that I came across, to some pictures I still have, where both the company I used to work for and the company of the ride that owns that particular piece of equipment would probably be like, yeah, don't put that picture up anywhere, because even though I don't work for them, it's still one of those things. I do have some sensitive pictures that I can't really release, even though it's been a long time since I worked there. That subject is really tricky to get around in this type of industry. But I thought I'd do some, instead of trying to edit a bunch of pictures and videos together and make a long 15-20 minute video, I'm just going to do a series of talkabouts like this and just do what comes to my head. So one of the first things today I wanted to talk about, we'll just make a real quick video about it, is I wanted to talk about just that breakdown. So that's the number one thing that guests and fans alike get a lot of experience with when you go to amusement parks, is you're in line and you're maybe close to the end, you've been waiting there for a long time, it's hot, you're sweaty, you can't wait to go on this ride, and then it breaks down. So what's a breakdown? Breakdown can be a number of things, but it's funny because the majority of the time a ride breaks down, it doesn't actually break down. It's working perfectly fine in the background. Most of the time what happens is that someone gets sick. If they get sick on the ride and throw up on the ride, or some other bodily fluid is released onto the ride, they have to stop and clean it up. And depending on the fluid that was released, sometimes we have to wait for paramedics, i.e. like the park ambulance, EMT, first aid personnel to come and clean it up. For instance, if someone throws up, the ride operations crew can clean that up right off the train, sanitize the seats, and get it back up and running. But it does take about 5 to 10 minutes to clean that up, depending on the severity. But that's a time where the ride is experiencing an unexpected delay in operation, you know. But so as far as people are in the ride concerned, in line, the ride broke down, but it didn't actually break down. They're just cleaning some vomit off of the ride. But if someone gets a bloody nose on the ride, which happens quite often, the people operating the ride are not trained to deal with blood and all the pathogens that could be inside of it. So they have to stop and wait for a professional medical person to show up that is trained and has the proper PPE to respond to that blood or whatever is on the seats and clean it up. So that's the number one thing that causes it. Number two, people doing stupid stuff in line is one thing. They will stop operation. If you're doing something in line and you're being unsafe around other people especially, they'll stop the ride until security can get there and get you ejected from the park. Medical emergencies, stop operation of the ride. The number one thing that happens there is people did not drink enough fluids and it's too hot standing in direct sunlight. Who builds a queue line in direct sunlight, right? I don't know. Everybody. But anyways, they pass out in the queue line, and when somebody passes out, that creates an unsafe condition, and they don't know the severity of what that person has had happen to them. So the ride is shut down, typically unloaded, stopped, and then the EMTs come out and get a hold of them, and they carry them off, and they're able to continue operation. The other one is recoverable errors. This is an error where the ride is thrown out in error, and it has a problem. It says like a photo eye went high, meaning it was blocked. Photo eye went high when there was no train in the block. So it locks the ride up. Well, maintenance can typically come and reset those faults and get the ride back up and running fairly quickly and get the people unloaded from the ride. Continue some test cycles, go out, take a look at the photo eye, whatever it may be. And like bigger parks, like your destination parks, like Disney's and places like that, they don't necessarily, they're very careful and designed a tree in which the operations personnel can do a certain number of things. Like operations can clear the fault and get the ride back up and running, just to keep guests moving through, to keep guests happy, to keep the downtime low on the ride. But there's certain things that they can reset and certain things they have to wait for maintenance, especially if they go to reset a fault and the fault doesn't reset. Then you got to call it maintenance. When maintenance shows up and they have a fault that won't clear and they cannot get rid of the fault, they'll try some advanced stuff like a very technical process of cycling the ON/OFF switch. We'll try a handful of stuff to get it back up and running, and after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of saying this is not coming back up for us for some reason, we get with operations and we're telling we're going to have to do a standard evacuation, and that's where you see people walking off the ride. They have to get the ride locked out, the trains have to be chained off in spot. It's a very big, complex situation because there's a lot of people, a lot of moving components, and you want to make sure everybody's safe, because it's kind of an unusual scenario. But that's the reason why those brakes and things like that, that's the reason they're lined with catwalks, is to get people off of them and to aid in the inspection in the daytime. So that's pretty much your breakdowns. The ones you see where people were stuck for 3 hours, people were stuck for 4 hours on a ride, those were a set of unusual circumstances, something that lined up that the park had not expected. No matter what you do, you can put all these procedures and processes together, but at the end of the day, if for some reason something breaks really bad and it breaks in an unusual fashion, something might be stuck in an odd location until you can figure out how to get people down off of there. I remember Knott's Berry Farm, the Windjammer, I think it was Cloud Seeker, I don't remember, one of the big swing rides that was up there, it was stuck way up high. And at the park I worked at, we had to shut down the ride that was similar to that. And we had to shut it down because the state wanted us to shut it down until we could put it all the way up at the top and we could prove to the state that we had X amount of things taken care of and we could get people off of it with it stuck all the way up at the top, all the way at the bottom, and everywhere in between. And we were able to do that as soon as the state had time to come out and see us, and we were able to get that one back up and running. When it comes to those weird breakdowns and things like that, you have to give a shout out to the engineers at the company who possesses the ride. So they work hand in hand with the people who built the ride, and they come up with all these weird scenarios of how this thing could fail and go wrong, and they come up with everything necessary to get people off of that. Sometimes the manufacturer of the ride thinks of it, sometimes the engineers of the park that owns it thinks of it, and the pass off there is that the manufacturer of the ride can only go so far, but if you're like a Disney and you put tons of theming in the way of something, the manufacturer can't really compensate for all the theming that you put around their ride. So some of the things like that. I'm going to call it after this. I hope you guys understand. I hope to get some more videos made and out there and just do some of these little 5-minute quick talks. If you have an idea of something that you want to talk about or want to hear more about, or maybe include something on that next video or whatever I might release, just let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. I want to try to grow the channel. I've got to start making content a lot more first. I understand. Sorry about that. But definitely like and subscribe. And thank you very much for hanging in there all this time. And take care. See you guys later.